How loud do you think your own breath can be? Have you ever stopped to think that the simple sound of your heart beating could actually be the thing that gets you killed? For most of us, when we're in danger, our first instinct is to scream, cry, or beg for mercy. But for 8 women in Rwanda, the only way to stay alive was to become as silent as a stone. Imagine a tiny bathroom, only 3 feet wide and 4 feet long. Now, imagine 8 grown women squeezed into that space. There is no room to move, no room to sit comfortably, and absolutely no permission to speak. Outside those walls, a genocide is tearing the country apart. Thousands of people are being killed with machetes and spears. And these 8 women are hiding right in the middle of it. Tucked away behind a wardrobe, they stayed there for 91 days. That's 3 whole months of absolute, crushing silence. Can you even imagine being trapped in a dark, cramped room for 3 months without saying a single word? Today, we're going to talk about the incredible story of Immaculée Ilibagiza and her companions. A story of survival that feels almost impossible. It was April 1994. The sky over Rwanda had turned a literal blood red. A wave of violence had broken out as Hutu extremists began a mission to wipe out the Tutsi minority. Immaculée was a college student back then, home on vacation to spend time with her family. She had no idea that this holiday would turn into the greatest nightmare of her life. As the killers roamed the streets with machetes, Immaculée's father told her she had to run. He sent her to the house of a local pastor. Now, this pastor was a Hutu, the same ethnic group as the killers, but he was a man of peace. He knew that by hiding Immaculée, he was putting his own life on the line. If he were caught, he'd be killed instantly. Still, he took the risk. He led Immaculée and 7 other women to a secret bathroom, hidden behind a large wooden wardrobe in his bedroom. That bathroom was smaller than most closets. In that 3 by 4 foot space, 8 people had to coexist. It sounds impossible, doesn't it? But when you're terrified for your life, you find a way to make the impossible happen. To hide the door, the pastor pushed a heavy wardrobe in front of it. From the outside, you'd never know there was a room back there. That was the beginning of their life in the shadows. There were no windows, just a tiny vent near the ceiling that let in a sliver of light. The women had to sit or stand so close together that their bodies were practically fused. One person's arm would be over another's shoulder. Someone's legs would be tucked under someone else's back. They stayed like that for hours, then days, then weeks. Silence was their only weapon. The pastor was very clear. They could not make a single sound. If they even whispered, they might be heard. So, they stopped talking. They learned to communicate entirely through their eyes and hand gestures. When someone was hungry, thirsty, or in pain, they just looked at each other. Can you imagine the mental toll? The heat was suffocating, the air was stale, and the lack of hygiene was unbearable. But the fear of what was outside was much worse than the discomfort inside. Through the thin walls, they could hear everything. They heard the screams of the killers and the cries of their victims. They heard the sounds of their own neighbors being murdered in the streets. The most terrifying moments were when the killers actually entered the pastor's house. Groups of men would burst in, searching every corner, and she would bang on the walls and move furniture. Immaculée later remembered a time when the killers were standing right on the other side of that wardrobe. She could hear the metal of their machetes clinking against each other. She lay on the floor, holding her breath so hard her lungs burned, praying that her heartbeat wouldn't be loud enough for them to hear. Think about that. Being just inches away from death, with only a thin piece of wood protecting you. Food was another struggle, because the pastor had to keep them a secret, even from his own family. He could only bring them scraps late at night. 8 women had to share a few pieces of bread or a bit of rice. They were starving. By the end of those 3 months, Immaculée had lost half her body weight. While the rest of the world was moving on, these women were slowly wasting away in a dark corner, unsure if they would ever see the sun again. The mental pressure was almost enough to drive them crazy. Sitting in the dark for 91 days gives you too much time to think. They didn't know if their families were alive. They didn't know if the country was still standing. Immaculée survived by focusing on her faith. She had a set of rosary beads and she would pray all day long just to keep her mind from snapping. Whenever it rained, they felt a small sense of relief. The sound of the rain hitting the roof was loud enough to mask any small noises they might make. For a few minutes, they could stretch their cramped muscles or take a deeper breath without fear. Those moments of rain were like a gift from heaven. Finally, after 91 days, the nightmare began to end. French troops arrived in the area, and the situation started to stabilize. When the pastor finally moved the wardrobe and opened the door, the women could barely move. The light was so bright it blinded them. They didn't look like the same people who had entered that room 3 months earlier. They looked like walking skeletons. Immaculée soon found out the devastating truth. Almost her entire family had been killed. Only one of her brothers, who was studying abroad at the time, had survived. The world she knew was gone, but she was alive. Immaculée Ilibagiza's story isn't just about the horrors of war. It's a story about the incredible strength of the human spirit. It shows us how much a person can endure when they have no other choice. We often complain about the smallest inconveniences in our daily lives, but these women showed us what true patience and resilience look like. They conquered death by being silent. After she recovered, Immaculée did something even more shocking. She chose to forgive. She actually met the man who killed her family and told him she forgave him. She believed that holding on to hate would only keep her trapped in a different kind of prison. Today, she travels the world sharing her story and teaching people about peace. This story of 8 women, 1 tiny bathroom, and 91 days of silence is one of the most powerful chapters in human history. It reminds us that even in the darkest, most cramped corners of the world, there is a light that can't be put out. If this story touched you, let us know what you think. Do you think you could have survived 3 months in that kind of silence?
Almost gone.